Now, days after the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPC) said it had enough fuel in stock for the next 35 days, the long queues in Abuja have refused to go away as the scarcity bites harder in the FCT. Our Rice correspondent Omo Bazoye, who monitored the fuel situation in parts of the city, now tells us more.
In our own country again, we are suffering. For what God bless us.
Despite assurances from authorities, Nigerians have in the last few months struggled day and night to fuel their vehicles. In Abuja, the scarcity takes a toll on residents who still have to deal with an excruciating cash crunch. This taxi driver, Isaac Yakubu, is stuck in the middle of the fuel crisis. Without sufficient fuel in his tank, his taxi business holds little prospect for a take-home that will be enough to take care of himself and his family.
I don't know what is happening in this country. This is a country that God has blessed, but we are suffering like this. For crying out loud, who can deliver? Who is the Messiah that will come and salvage this country? Because we are, since 1960, we have been suffering like this up to date. This is how we are going to suffer till our next generation.
At the corn oil filling station, directly opposite the high-rising headquarters of Nigeria's oil managers, NNPC Limited, motorists wait endlessly on POS queue for vouchers that will entitle them to buy fuel.
No, we will not, sir.
It's a long wait on another long queue, and the frustration is beginning to tell on many who had had to endure the situation.
This is fuel matter, it's a scarcity, it's a national crisis. And as a journalist, you know also I have the right.
It didn't take time, however, before our crew was asked to leave the premises and prevented from filming any further.
Is it not right for you to meet anybody and talk?
Even at the key there, they have 3 POS machines there. At the point of service there, it's only one that is working. Because this is second experience. In fact, when I enter here now, I have no option than to enter here because it took the grace of God. In Nigeria today, you have to be prayer warrior for your life to even become functional.
In the midst of the fuel crisis, hundreds of black market vendors, mostly youths, continue to cash in on the situation with a 10-litre gallon of fuel selling in the street for as high as 4,000 naira.
Now, after queuing for your car, you have to go and queue to make payment. I've never seen this kind of thing before in my life. At times, I wish I'm still back with my parents when they are paying my bills.
As something is trying to come down now, before you know, after maybe 1 or 2 weeks, it will rise again.
The fuel situation is the same everywhere else in Abuja, and despite explanation by NNPC Limited that it has enough supply for the next 35 days, the scarcity has refused to go away, with the toll of it telling on the likes of these motorists struggling to refuel and restart his SUV. Omo Bazoye, Arise News.
Joining us to look at this similarly on NM fuel scarcity is the Deputy Dean, School of Communications, Bayes University here in Abuja. Thank you for joining us, Prof.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Let's have a quick reaction to that.
Well, it's very unfortunate, definitely so. It's been a long-drawn problem, something that we thought by now would have resolved. Not like a historical problem, deep in our history from the military period up to the democratic dispensation, somewhat leading or partly to the expansion of the downstream sector, which was said to be part of the problem for perennial queues. I remember Obasanjo being concerned about having mega stations, thinking that with that distribution would be enhanced. But over the time, every little problem has led to these kinds of long queues, problems. Sometimes you hear flooding is preventing tankers from moving, sometimes tankers strike, sometimes, lack of diesel, or all kinds of little problems lead to this really. And you want to wonder, what is the problem? Why can't we deal with the details that impede the course of smooth supply of fuel? It's a conversation that we'll have to deal with, beyond focusing on big issues like infrastructure, utilities. We've made this point severally. We also have to be concerned about everyday details of our everyday living, things that enhance our everyday well-being, fuel, ability to move money from one point to the other, maybe through electronically or otherwise. All these things are becoming problem for the average citizen.
Okay, now,
and of course, it's becoming very, very frustrating. You could see all the people you spoke to, you could see how frustrated they are.
Yeah.
And somebody was even saying that that's why we are resigning to God, because everything we do, it's just impossible for us. Life is becoming very, very difficult. You cannot transact
having to rely
business
on the Almighty, on things that we can actually do on our own. It must be a very sorry state. But Professor Adeniyi, the fact that 6 days ago, the NNPC Limited had released a statement saying they had about 1.2 billion litres of petrol in country to serve about 35 days all across the country. Yeah. 1.2 billion, that was the statement. We had it here on Newsnight. And also, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission had said, you know what, the reason why you're experiencing this scarcity was because of the elections, because trucks couldn't move. But elections, that's speaking of the presidential, it's been over 2 weeks. So where is the gap? They say, and UPR says, don't panic buy. NNPC say we have enough supply, but yet Nigerians are having to suffer to get this product. So where's the gap?
That's actually the problem, really, and that's the X factor in public policy issues. Public policy decisions. At the end of the day, you find that implementation is a problem. The commanding NNPC hierarchy has said that there shouldn't be a problem. They have enough supply. They've made enough arrangement. But why is it possible? Why is it impossible for these things to get down to where they're supposed to get down to? So that's the X factor we keep talking about in governance. And sometimes you also find that citizens are also part of the problem. But it's very, very difficult to blame citizens, really. I don't like always to do this. I always like to focus on leadership because they have a bigger responsibility. But I do know citizens also like to cash in on every little opportunity to take advantage of each other. And you see us behaving like people in the jungle, with every due respect, trying to undo ourselves, inflicting pain on ourselves. And some of these things have a way of preventing government policies, well-intended government policies, from actually working. Sometimes it may not even be ordinary citizens. Maybe somebody in the hierarchy, in the top there, is also trying to take advantage. And because anytime you see this kind of long queue, quickly you immediately see those who sell fuel in black markets. In the black market, will quickly spring up, and the fuel will be available in the black market. But in the so-called, in the maybe white market, in the regular fuel station, you won't see. So it's just unfortunate that we live in a world where we are mutually mischievous. We tend to inflict harm on ourselves, but the onus largely really rest on the leadership. At the end of the day. Yeah.
Now let's take a look at the investment in the downstream sector. I want you to take what's your assessment of, do you think we have adequate investment in the downstream sector?
It's a long conversation. First, we have to understand that the petroleum sector is a key sector in this country. We are heavily reliant on it in terms of income, in terms of revenue generation, and anytime there is a dip in that sector, it affects the overall economy, and that's why our economy is presently on a tailspin. So improving on whether the upstream or the downstream sector is a continuous work. It's not something we can actually measure at any point in time. But overall, to help this perennial problem of distribution, arguments from industry experts, have pointed at the need for us for more investment in the downstream sector. And you can't really fault them, because we have a higher level of investment in the upstream. Multi-billion-dollar companies are present there, and of course, many of them being transnational companies, you know, you see higher level of productivity and efficiency in that sector. But when it comes to the downstream, of course, that's where the unfortunate Nigerian factor begins to set in. And when it sets in, of course, you see you know, decline in productivity and efficiency. But that's not to say that we shouldn't continue to improve. There's still many room for improvement. But Amaka, just hold on. And that's why in the build-up to, when democracy came, Obasanjo was concerned about this sector. It brought about some reform, led to mega stations. Mega stations have come now. Is it possible to say that because of increase in our population, increased need, is it to say that, you know, that chain provided by the mega station has now been overwhelmed by increased demand for the product? That's another question that we probably would need to ask as we continue the conversation to improve on.
Well, the argument really just continues, and it depends on who you're speaking to in the sector. They have different reasons, you know, to deduce what is going on in the country. But Professor Adeniyi, this is one of the longest scarcity we've had of petroleum products, 6 months and counting. Because if you remember, this started as far back as October of last year. Because we've been having this conversation. Yes, sometimes it seems like it eases off, but eventually in less than a few days and it comes back. So at the end of the day now, the marketers will blame a particular group. Those groups will blame others. But the person who suffers the most is the ordinary Nigerian on the street.
That sometimes include the
so what should we be looking at in the short term as a solution to this perennial fuel scarcity? And for a country that actually has this oil naturally given to us by the Almighty?
It's
short-term solutions, if any.
Very tough question. I think maybe we should just have to ask the leaders in the sector to be much more responsive. You know, whatever policy they have put in place to prevent these, they should probably quickly investigate and find out what is preventing it from working, so that they can alleviate the plight of the people. We are all feeling this. We cannot all get fuel, and sometimes if you have to take the pain to go to the queue, you'll be waiting hours on end. You're not even sure at the end of the day whether you will get when it gets to your turn. So sometimes you are compelled to buy from the black market, you know, which is very expensive, and sometimes you even run the risk of buying the adulterated one. So the only thing we can do in the short term is to call on the leaders in the sector, you know, public officials in the sector, senior public officials, to get on to it, get cracking, find out what the problem is, and let's have a quick resolution of the crisis.
We hope they're listening to you and watching you, and we hope that something quick will be done about this, so that the citizens can then heave a sigh of relief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi.